Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We hope you're having an excellent week in between Christmas and New Year's. As you probably know, but if you don't, let me tell you, we're in the middle of our 6 year-end specials, covering a lot of different categories about the year that's been in politics. We started out on Christmas Eve talking about most overrated, underrated, and honest political figures. Then on Monday, we talked about political figures we're most sorry to see go, plus rising star and figures fading into oblivion. And then yesterday, we talked about worst scandal, best political theater, and worst political theater. So we're halfway done. We're starting the second half of our awards season here. And our categories for today, best idea, worst idea, and the boldest tactic. So, Jim, kick it off with the best idea of 2021.
So it's kind of more of a broad theme than one particular idea, but I do kind of feel like there's a common thread that runs through all of the phenomenon I'm about to describe. The theme is basically the backlash against wokeism, and I think you can see it in everything from both politicians and city councils and folks who have pretty much dropped their idea of abolishing the police. Minneapolis most prominent, but a bunch of cities kind of had done that or restored police funding here and there. The election of Eric Adams in New York City's mayoral race as a former cop and someone who's running on a law and order and a little bit of pro-business attitude there, at least by the standards of New York Democrats. Here in Virginia, the protests against school boards on all kinds of not just critical race theory, but also stuff that's sexually inappropriate in terms of transgender and inappropriate contributions to the Fairfax County school libraries. Although I should point out that they restored the two books, graphic novels, and they put the graphic back into the term graphic novels. And then finally, just the difficulties Democrats have had in getting their agenda passed. Yes, they got the infrastructure bill passed. Yes, they got a big COVID relief bill passed, but they had a really hard time. And as of this recording, Build Back Better has not passed and isn't looking that good. Expanding the size of the Supreme Court, statehood for Puerto Rico and District of Columbia. There were a whole bunch of woke ideas that a lot of Democrats thought were going to happen in 2021 that did not happen. Because after a while, Americans realized, you know what? There were a lot of Americans who had problems with Donald Trump. They weren't totally on board with everything the Republicans did. They gave the ball to Democrats, and they didn't like what they saw, most notably in the realm of inflation and the state of the economy. COVID, the president who ran around saying, I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country. I'm going to shut down the virus. He did not shut down the virus, and life is still complicated. Afghanistan, the border, the president did not deliver on his promises, and American people, like Virginia was the most vivid demonstration of it. But I think the fact that the New Jersey governor's race was close, a whole bunch of down ticket things going well for Republicans. Americans are not happy with hard left progressivism. In fact, earlier this year, Bob Costas joined us on this program and characterized himself as someone who considers himself left of center or a Democrat, but who is not on board with wokeism. People are fed up with it. They're tired of it. The backlash is here. And kind of foreshadowing one of my future picks, I think 2022 will be seen as the year of the reckoning.
Well, I hope so. It seems that even when the voters show up and they give a very clear message, whether it's New York City, which is about as far left as you can go, or Virginia, which is a lot more blue than it was just a few years ago. They seem like they maybe get the message for about 15 minutes, and then they go right back to pushing the same agenda that they were before. So we'll see if the left actually learns its lesson or just tampers down the rhetoric. My choice here, Jim, first of all, excellent choice by you. I'm going to drill in a little bit on one of those because I'm kind of in the same area, and it's specifically with the schools. The parents who went before their various school boards on a variety of issues, whether it's the mask mandates, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's transgender issues and that sort of thing, whatever it was that drove the parents to get engaged. Civic engagement is critical, and doing it at the local level is actually not only the most critical, but it's also the most effective, because that's where you can make the biggest difference. If you show up to a national protest in Washington, which you're perfectly welcome to do, and sometimes they do make a difference, that you need a lot bigger voice than you do if you're talking to your school board members. And these parents, obviously, as a result of the pandemic in some cases, paying a lot closer attention, having the opportunity to hear and see firsthand as their kids were learning remotely what was going on and not liking it, They got together. They showed up at these meetings, they found common cause, and they pushed back, in some cases actually getting policies reversed, and in other cases pushing issues into the forefront so voters could actually see what was happening and getting election results that those people on the school boards and elsewhere didn't want, and even most likely getting a Republican governor and the whole Republican ticket elected in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It also, I think, has helped push the idea of school choice, which is not only an absolutely essential idea, it's one that is extraordinarily popular, but always seems to get shoved to the back burner because something involving national security or the economy, all these big issues, of course, gets the attention. Or maybe it's just the candidates' personalities. In the era of Trump, the media focused entirely on Trump pretty much 24/7. But school choice is a winner. It's a winner with families across the board, whether it's inner city, especially where a lot of our schools are not very good, as well as out in the suburbs. So whether it's having the opportunity to try out different public schools, whether it's having the opportunity to maybe, if you go to the next step of vouchers, taking that money to private schools or Christian schools. Homeschooling's now a boom. Parents taking the initiative and getting a lot more involved, not because they didn't care before, but because they saw up close and personal what was happening. They didn't like it, and they were going to take charge of what happens with their kids. Awesome development.
Excellent selection, Greg, and I salute your specificity where I just totally abandoned it.
Well, that's basically my meandering way of saying we kind of had the same thing, but I definitely wanted to give a shout out to school choice because I think it's not only a political dynamo for the right because the left can't, since they're so beholden to the teachers unions who, my gosh, what a couple of years they've had. But it just makes sense. I mean, everything else, the more options you have, the better the competition's going to be. But apparently in schools, it's very difficult to make that happen. So kudos to the parents for doing that. Anyway, but as parents, you've got your work, you've got your family, you're fighting these fights in front of the school boards. You're tired. You're going to need the best possible rest to keep juggling all these things. And so that's where MyPillow comes in. Look, I know we're past Christmas, so maybe you're buying for yourself. Maybe you're buying for someone else you think really needs a good night's rest given everything they've put up with this year in terms of home and school and elsewhere. But MyPillow, they've got everything in stock. No back orders, no delayed shipping, whether it's the towels, the sheets, the pillows themselves, the slippers. They're all fantastic products, and they're ready for you to order right now.
Because the MyPillow is made 100% right here in the United States, and they have built a huge inventory, they can ensure their customers and you will have gifts for everyone. If, say, you botched the first gift, or you're looking for a makeup, or you're just one of those families that likes to exchange gifts for Super Bowl Sunday or something. There are no supply chain issues, no delays, and no backlog. Christmas was not canceled at MyPillow. Now, this shopping season, they are full of everything you could possibly want on their website, everything from the MyPillows at the lowest price ever to the sheets, slippers, robes, and now cardigans. They're all in stock and they're all ready to ship fast. MyPillow is your one-stop shop for everyone on your list.
And all MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. And I cannot recommend the products highly enough. Let me just talk about the pillow for a second. By far the best pillow I've ever had. It always just hits my head right in the right spot. My neck is supported well, and it's given me the best night's sleep compared to any pillow I've had for a very, very long time, possibly ever. So go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener special as soon as you get there, and then you can get specials like buy one, get one free on Giza Dream Sheets or the lowest price ever on the MyPillow Premiums when you use the promo code Martini. Or you can use that code when you call 800-874-0104. Don't miss the sale of the year. MyPillow.com, promo code Martini, or call 800-874-0104. Sleep better with MyPillow.com. All right, Jim, on to the worst idea of 2021.
Well, as we've discussed in some of our other servings of these year-end awards, the worst categories always seem to have a lot more strong competitive possibilities than the best categories. But chewing it over, I think I feel pretty strong about my selection. And some folks may be surprised by my choice, considering how much I have covered the pandemic over the past 2 years. But I believe that the philosophy of COVID zero is the worst idea of 2021. Hopefully, we'll be leaving it behind in this year, although I think that as of this recording, that's still an open question. And I should emphasize what I mean by COVID zero. COVID zero is a belief that somehow, some way, we can prevent people from ever running into a virus that, many virologists and health officials and biologists and folks like that look at and say, look, this thing's going to become endemic, meaning that it is going to become commonplace. It is never going to go away completely, the same way that the common cold or the flu never go away completely. Now, we don't shut down society over the common cold or the flu. We, tell people to go out and get your flu shots. It's worth noting, probably a lot of listeners have had this experience. You can get the flu shot and still catch the flu. In fact, in my house, we've had pre-COVID, it was almost a tradition that, everybody else in the house, seemingly except for me, would get their flu shots early in winter or late fall, and then, of course, end up catching the flu at some point. Look, from the very beginning, I've been telling people, take COVID-19 seriously. Yes, it is a very high survival rate. That's good. Your odds of, but between long COVID and the increased risk of this, particularly if you're elderly, if you're immunocompromised, if you have what they delightfully call comorbidities, which generally include obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure. Look, there are a lot of Americans who have conditions like this. You're recovering from cancer, you have cancer. These are all reasons to be a little more concerned about COVID-19. The bad news is, the Delta variant is even more contagious than COVID classic, shall we say. And, in the late towards right around Thanksgiving, we came across the Omicron variant, and the Omicron variant, at least according to one study, is 70 times more contagious. Now, I emphasize, it spreads 70 times faster in the part of your lungs that connects to your windpipe, but not the actual lungs themselves, which basically means you exhale a lot more of it. Now, that's bad. It means you're more likely to spread it. It means you're more likely to catch it. Here's the silver lining. The exact same study said the Omicron variant spreads 10 times slower in your lungs, which is why it's generally seen as less severe, less likely to be life-threatening. You can hear me knocking on wood as I say that. Omicron might be the way more contagious but milder virus, and that would be, all things probably on balance good. The problem is it could spread really far and fast. Chances are everybody's going to get it, which is why you probably want your body to be as prepared as you possibly can. If you had COVID before, great. It's possible Omicron might not, might be a little different enough so that your system may not recognize it quite as quickly as it would from the Delta variant or one of these other variants. But I'm not going to poo-poo natural immunity. If you've had it before, chances are you've got some degree of immunity. But obviously, you want to get yourself vaccinated if you haven't. You want to get yourself boosted if you're in one of those qualified categories. Your body's going to run into it at some point. You want your body to be as prepared for it as possible. That said, there are certain people whose mentality never really moved beyond March 2020. They are still at the psychological DEFCON 1. They are still very much this sense that catching COVID-19 is a moral or personal failure, that you must have done something bad. You must have done something reckless. You must have done something stupid or foolish. That is not the case. This is a very contagious virus, and it goes around really fast. You didn't do anything bad. You didn't do anything stupid. There's nothing wrong with you. Chances are your body's going to fight it off pretty well. We've got good, a variety of improving treatments, although we'd have even more if the FDA would get off the stick. But all in all, I think this is a manageable health crisis. And the other thing is that constant isolation, constant lockdowns, keeping people separated from their loved ones, all of these have serious other health consequences, to say nothing of keeping people away from going to the doctor and having those other non-COVID health problems taken care of. Look, these last 2 years have been utterly exhausting, and hardships. People have lost loved ones. People have had to deal with separations. We could talk, for the entire podcast about just the effect on our kids and the cancellation of schools for so long and so-called distance learning. You got to let people get back, if not to completely normal life, then something very close to it, 90% of it or something like that. Be careful with Omicron out there, but let people go out, let people interact, let people assess the risk for themselves. Yeah, I know it drives you crazy when somebody won't get vaccinated, but you know what? Freedom means the freedom to be wrong. Freedom means the freedom to dissent from what everybody else is saying and doing. It's been an extraordinarily frustrating year, and I kind of feel like our public health officials are the kinds of people who have the least functional zero tolerance for risk. I'm pretty sure these guys don't go skydiving on weekends. And the end result is you end up, with a public policy that is designed to minimize risk. And along the way, it is minimizing life. Let people be free. Let people manage the risk for themselves. We will get through this someday.
So once again, Jim, we are in the same arena, but I think we're significantly different enough this time. But yes, the expectation that this would just eventually not exist has never really been realistic. And it was there from the get-go. Hey, 2 weeks, remember? 2 weeks, and we'll keep everybody cooped up, and it won't have any place to transmit, and it's eventually just going to die off. It'll be real quick. Everybody get back to their life. Yeah, it's not how it works. But they tried, and it didn't work. And they're still trying, and I don't know why. My worst idea of the year, Biden's vaccine mandates. Look, what you think about the vaccine is not the same as what you think about a mandate. Now, I know there's some clips out there from officials in Australia that have declared people anti-vax if they're against vaccine mandates. That's insane, okay? You can absolutely have the position that you should get the vaccine and that it should not be mandatory in order to have gainful employment. How absurd that the government thinks it can even step into that particular arena. And look, very early on, after the vaccines came out, Mrs. Corumbus and I had a series of conversations about it because at that point, it was mainly the elderly and the immunocompromised who were eligible to get them. So it was a few weeks before it was even a possibility anyway. And we came to the conclusion very quickly, Jim, hey, I'm going to let you make your decision on when and if to get the vaccine. And you're going to let me make up my mind on when and if to get the vaccine. And we never had a debate about this, even though she was a little more eager to go do it. She got it done in the spring. I held off to see, if there was going to be a large pile of bodies in the streets for a few months. And then I ultimately got it done in the summer. Ended up getting COVID shortly after that anyway, but it's certainly possible that it had a lesser effect on me because of that. And so the idea that Biden swoops in there in September and says not only federal workers, not only federal contractors, but anybody who works for a company, private company, who cares? If you have over 100 employees, totally random number, you have to get this done. That's the rule, or there's going to be really, really stiff penalties. And as you mentioned, then they took their sweet time trying to get the OSHA rule out, which is now getting battered around like Glass Joe in the old Mike Tyson Punch-Out game in court. And so the idea, that they don't take natural immunity into account, they don't take personal choice into account. The government can't do this, as we're learning in the courts, and I think that's ultimately where this is going to end up. And the government should not be able to do this. And you have people out there, and this is where it gets a little thornier, saying, well, you can't send your kids to school unless they're vaccinated for polio and measles and mumps and all that stuff. And that is true. That is true. However, we've got decades of that, and you don't necessarily know what the long-term effects are. So far, things are looking pretty good, but we just don't know. And ultimately, regardless of that aspect of it, this is America. You have the freedom of choice. Might be smart to get it, but it's ultimately up to you, and it's not the government's job to threaten your livelihood if you don't.
Very well put there, Greg. And I noticed the irony of you getting COVID shortly after getting the vaccination. I'm sure there's probably one listener like, so how do you know you didn't get it from the vaccination? I don't think that's not how it shakes out. They don't actually put it into you or anything like that. But it does demonstrate that in addition to all of the bad Biden laws, we're trying to deal with this, we also have to work with Murphy's Law.
Well, just to clue folks in, because I don't think I actually explained this. You remember when I had the kidney stone, right? Well, I had the kidney stone. I had the kidney stone.
I was like, I should remember that, but it's probably even easier for you to remember.
Yes, exactly. So I got the kidney stone as I was emerging from the effects of the second vaccine. And the kidney stone, I'm like, I don't want to go to the ER. I don't want to go to the ER. So we ended up going to the ER. That was the day I was writhing on the couch at night watching the Bears get creamed by the Rams on opening night of Sunday NFL football. And so we go to the ER, and I can't
making it even worse. Like, the kidney stones. No, the Bears are worse.
Yes. And so did I get it there? There's a pretty good chance. I don't know how many people were there with COVID that day, but ultimately, by the end of the week, I had the monoclonal antibodies, and it never got too severe. 2 of my kids have had it now, and they had it very mild cases. So I feel like we're at least temporarily bulletproof now. So we're hopefully emerging from it. But again, the government, know your role, and this isn't it. So. And Jim, I think you struck a very good balance here. You've made it very clear how much you encourage people to get the vax and how much you're opposed to the government forcing people to do that. It's led to nothing but chaos And when you get ugly about it and force people to get it instead of encouraging them to get it, it makes them less likely to get it. So well done, everyone. All right, on to our final category now, Jim, the boldest tactic of 2021.
You know, Greg, for this one, I went a little non-traditional. Usually when you're talking about the boldest tactic, you want to have something like, oh, wow, that really worked. That was awesome. That's great. We should do more of that. And I don't think that necessarily fits for my nomination for this one. But I started thinking about, like, what surprised me this year? How did things not shake out the way I expected? Who behaved differently than I might have expected based on how the year began? And I concluded that the boldest tactic of 2021 was a bold tactic for an evil entity. But I think it is indisputably bold that instead of being chastened by the experience with the pandemic, it seems the Chinese government is more aggressive than ever. Now, whether or not you subscribe to the lab leak theory, I think it's much, an extraordinary coincidence that a novel coronavirus most similar to those found in bats just happened to pop up right outside one of the 3 institutions in the world that was doing gain-of-function research on coronaviruses found in bats. But let's assume it was a wet market. Let's assume just naturally somebody encounters a bat, the virus jumps into the person, all kind of stuff. Well, we all still know that the Chinese government was lying for the first minimum 3 weeks, in likelihood 6 weeks, of this pandemic, saying to the world, relax, it's not contagious, it's nothing to worry about. While in the meantime, they were buying up as much personal protective equipment as they possibly could, buying up the world's supply of N95 masks. And oh, by the way, remember that video of them building a hospital in like 10 days? Well, at the same time, they were insisting to the world, there's nothing to worry about. Well, if it's nothing to worry about, why are you trying to build hospitals overnight? So you'd think, based on this, like, oh, wow, maybe the Chinese government would be like, okay, we really did something risky. We really did something that made the whole world really mad at us. We're going to be a little more careful. We're going to try to attract less attention. No. With Biden in office, you might have expected them to extend an olive branch and play nice, in part because, he's the Democratic president, and he might think he's more likely to play ball with them, give them more of what they want. But in fact, from where I sit, the Chinese government seems to be enjoying humiliating Biden. So whether you're looking at Hong Kong, you're looking at the genocide of the Uyghurs, you're looking at the kind of crazy stuff that comes out of the state-run media, the flyovers of Taiwan, the experience of Peng Shui. I mean, the entire Chinese government seems bigger, bolder, more aggressive, and more shameless in how they go about these things. And they really seem to act like they don't fear anyone. So I think, unfortunately, after, a sheer recklessness, put the world into a crisis the likes of which it's never seen, instead of being more reticent, instead of being quieter, instead of trying to attract less attention on the world stage, China got twice as aggressive, and I don't think has paid anywhere nearly enough of a price for their recklessness and provocations and things, and aggressiveness and things like that. So we'll see how 2022 shakes out. I have a feeling on a whole bunch of fronts, 2022 is going to be a year of recrimination. It's going to be a year of a reckoning. It's going to be a year of long delayed conflicts finally flaring up. Hopefully not in a violent way, but I think these types of disputes can no longer be put off or have the can kicked down the road. So that was my nomination for the boldest tactic of 2021.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a very good choice. It wasn't my first choice, but now that you say it, it probably should have been, because you're right. I mean, they should have been absolutely the pariah of the international community, at least for lying about the transmissibility of COVID for weeks on end, if not for lying about the lab leak, which we're closer and closer to finding out is exactly how this all started. But yeah, you mentioned all the different areas where they have just gotten more aggressive. And so far, the only person to stand up to them is the Women's Tennis Association, which is probably not who you had on your short list for organizations that were going to hold the Chinese accountable. But apparently, they're the only one with the gumption to do it so far. Wow, good choice. Good choice. For me, it's the states of Mississippi and Texas. For years, since 1973, pro-lifers have wanted the opportunity to radically limit the availability of abortion because obviously they believe it is the murder of the unborn. We know that life begins at conception, despite what Sonia Sotomayor said at the recent oral arguments. She thinks that's just a religious question. And we know that through greater and greater technology that babies do feel pain and other stimuli at an earlier and earlier age. And so, the barbarity of abortion becomes obvious earlier and earlier in a pregnancy. So Mississippi passed a ban essentially on abortions after 15 weeks. Texas passed a heartbeat bill that the Supreme Court let stand until it hears the oral arguments and rules on the case. And so we'll see what the court says. We don't know what the political impact of this is. Jim, you mentioned in your morning jolt that given the polling, the diehards on the abortion issue, they're going to be where they are no matter what. And so the rest probably won't swing too much depending on what the court does, but we'll see. But ultimately, if you want to be bold and you really believe in an issue, you got to move it forward. These states knew that these laws were going to be challenged to the Supreme Court. And so for nearly 50 years, with more than 60 million babies killed in the womb, these states saw an opportunity. They passed the laws. They think they have a court that potentially will side with them, whether it's on the margins or, as Mississippi specifically asked, to overturn Roe v. Wade, which would not ban abortion in America, would leave it up to the states, which is where it should have been in the first place. Although, as a pro-lifer, I think it should obviously be very much restricted. But leave it up to the states to make those decisions, as it should be. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the cultural and political implication of it will be. But for decades, those who say they are pro-life have wanted this moment. They've got this moment, and they pursued it. We'll see what happens.
Greg, you hear from a lot of nationalist populists. What have conservatism ever conserved? What have Republicans ever done for us? What did George H.W. Bush ever do for us? Clarence Thomas, that's what he's done for us. Admittedly, he also gave us David Souter, so it kind of balances out. But still, he's done some stuff for us.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And we'll see where it lands. Recently, John Roberts suggested he might not be ready to go where some of the others, including Clarence Thomas, would. And we don't know. We ultimately don't know where this decision will land and how it will play out in the states if they even do effectively overturn Roe v. Wade. But in any event, when you've worked for a goal for decades and the opportunity is there, they're taking it. So good for them. Jim, we will reconvene tomorrow. Are there any stories that the media got wrong or overcovered or undercovered in 2021? I mean, the list is really short because they're so responsible and fair-minded in all of these things. But no, tomorrow we're going to talk about the most overcovered, undercovered, and the best story of 2021. So rest up. That's going to be a pretty vigorous discussion, I think.
All right, looking forward to it, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. We are also very grateful for your kind reviews, your 5-star ratings. Also know that you can get us on your home devices. All you have to tell Alexa is play Three Martini Lunch podcast, but it works for all those, snooping devices. Also, follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday and join us on Thursday for the next Three Martini Lunch.
We know there's so much craziness going on in the news these days, but don't worry because we're here to talk and laugh about it all. Elon Musk has been named Time's 2021 Person of the Year, supply chain shortages continue, and Biden did a meaningless interview on The Tonight Show.
Hey, it's the Chicks from the Chicks on the Right podcast. Download and subscribe to our daily podcast to hear us pick apart and pick on the news of the day, politics to pop culture. Nobody's safe, but it's all fun. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.